I never thought loneliness would creep into my life so silently. 5 years into my marriage with David, everything looked perfect from the outside. A spacious home, quiet dinners, polite smiles. Yet beneath the surface, I felt like a ghost in my own life, wandering through days that all looked the same. David was a good man, devoted to his career, driven by a tireless ambition that once attracted me. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to be present. Business trips, late meetings, exhausted silences, they became the language of our marriage. I told myself it was enough, that love was sacrifice. But doubt gnawed at me in the quiet hours of the night. When Liam, David's son from his first marriage, moved back home, it was meant to be temporary. He was 22, fresh out of college, unsure of his next steps. I remembered meeting him at the wedding, a polite handshake, a reserved smile. He had grown since then, taller, sharper, his boyish features replaced with something rougher, more magnetic. At first, it was easy to ignore the way he looked at me. Casual compliments, friendly jokes, long conversations in the kitchen while David was working late. I told myself it was harmless. Liam was just trying to be kind. Yet every word, every glance lingered longer than it should have. One afternoon, I found myself laughing, truly laughing, at something Liam said about a terrible movie we both loved. It startled me how natural it felt, how desperately I clung to that moment of lightness. Liam noticed too. His smile faltered for a second, his eyes searching mine with a question neither of us dared to voice. As days passed, the invisible thread between us tightened. Liam would brush past me a little too closely. His fingers would graze my hand when passing a dish. I would find myself dressing a little more carefully, lingering by the mirror longer than usual. It was foolish, reckless, and yet I couldn't stop. One evening, David called to cancel dinner plans yet again. Some last-minute client meeting he couldn't get out of. I set the table anyway, out of habit more than hope. Liam found me sitting there, staring at 2 untouched plates. "Let's not waste it," he said, flashing that lopsided grin. "You cooked all this. Might as well enjoy it." We shared wine over the meal, the conversation easy at first, music, college stories, silly memories. But as the bottle emptied, the air between us thickened. Liam grew quiet, swirling the wine in his glass. "You know," he said, voice low, "sometimes I wonder if anyone really sees me, or if I'm just filling space until they forget I'm there." His words pierced deeper than he intended. I recognized that hollow ache all too well. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand. "You're not invisible," I whispered. He turned his hand under mine, lacing our fingers together. The room shrank around us, silence pulsing. His gaze dropped to my mouth, and for one terrifying, electric second, I thought he might kiss me. I pulled away, heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Pushing my chair back, I mumbled something about cleaning up and fled to the kitchen. My hands shook as I washed the plates, the cold water burning against my skin. Later, in the darkness of my bedroom, I lay wide awake next to David's sleeping form. Guilt twisted inside me, sharp and unforgiving. I told myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth. A line had been crossed, even if lips had never met. The silence of the night wrapped around me like a shroud. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard creaked. Liam moving in his room, perhaps. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the world to rewind, to erase the dangerous path I had started down. But it was too late. Something fragile had cracked between us. And deep down, a voice I didn't want to acknowledge whispered, this was only the beginning. The days that followed blurred into a heavy, unbearable tension. Every moment near Liam felt charged, a magnetic pull neither of us could fully resist. I tried to keep my distance, polite greetings, minimal conversation, but the walls of the house seemed to conspire against me, forcing us into each other's orbit. One evening, with David once again stuck at the office, I found myself alone in the kitchen, aimlessly chopping vegetables more out of habit than hunger. Liam wandered in, barefoot, a careless smile on his face that faltered when he saw me. "You're avoiding me," he said softly, leaning against the counter. "I'm trying to do the right thing," I replied without looking up, my voice brittle. He crossed the room in 2 strides, his presence wrapping around me like smoke. And what if the right thing feels all wrong? I dropped the knife onto the cutting board with a clatter. "Liam, we can't," I whispered. It can't be." But when he reached out, cupping my face with a trembling hand, all the arguments I had rehearsed crumbled into dust. His mouth found mine in a desperate, searching kiss, and I didn't push him away. The world fell away, drowned by the roaring of blood in my ears. It was a collision of loneliness, anger, longing, all the feelings I had buried for years erupting in a single, reckless moment. I barely remembered moving, but somehow we ended up tangled on the couch, a chaotic tangle of limbs and whispered names. Afterward, the silence was deafening. I sat up quickly, pulling the throw blanket around me as though it could shield me from what we had done. Liam tried to reach for me again, but I flinched away. "This was a mistake," I said, voice shaking. "A terrible mistake." "You didn't seem to think so a few minutes ago," he muttered bitterly, standing to gather his clothes. Tears blurred my vision. Don't ever speak of this again. Promise me." His jaw clenched, but he nodded once before retreating to his room, the door clicking shut with a finality that left me hollow. I spent the night sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. When David finally came home, he kissed my forehead distractedly, too tired to notice how I recoiled under his touch. From that night on, the house became a battlefield of unspoken words and sidelong glances. I avoided Liam at every turn, throwing myself into chores, errands, anything to escape the suffocating guilt. Yet even across a crowded room, I could feel his gaze burning into me. David, oblivious, floated through the days, his mind tethered firmly to spreadsheets and client calls. But cracks had started to show, a strained patience, a questioning glance when he caught me staring into space too long. One afternoon, Kathy cornered me at the cafe, where we sometimes met for coffee. She took one look at my pale face and trembling hands and set down her cup with a sharp clink. "Emma," she said, voice low. "What's going on?" I shook my head, the lie ready on my tongue, but it withered under her gaze. Kathy had always been able to see through me. "I made a mistake," I whispered. "A huge, unforgivable mistake." Her expression softened, but her voice was firm. "Mistakes can be forgiven. Lies rot you from the inside out. Whatever it is, Emma, be careful. Secrets don't stay buried. They find ways to scream themselves out." Her words clung to me like smoke long after I left the cafe. That evening, Liam cornered me again. He waited until David was upstairs, distracted by a conference call, before slipping into the laundry room where I was folding towels. "I can't do this," he said urgently. "I can't pretend nothing happened." I kept my eyes firmly on the towels. "You have to. I'm not a kid anymore, Emma. I know what I feel." His hand brushed mine, a pleading touch. I pulled away sharply. "It doesn't matter what we feel. It was wrong. It's over." He stared at me, something wounded flashing in his eyes. "Is it really that easy for you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Later that night, just as I was climbing into bed, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, heart sinking as I saw Liam's name flash across the screen. "I can't stop thinking about you. I don't care what it costs." I turned the phone face down on the nightstand, but the words burned themselves into my mind. Even with David snoring quietly beside me, the house no longer felt safe. I had opened a door that could never be closed again, and something was coming through. The walls of our home felt thinner by the day, as if the house itself could barely contain the weight of our secrets. Every conversation, every shared meal was a brutal performance, a carefully balanced charade that threatened to collapse at any moment. I avoided Liam as much as possible, retreating into tasks, errands, even spending hours organizing closets that didn't need organizing. But he was relentless, a constant presence, his emotions simmering just beneath the surface. Every brush of his hand, every lingering glance chipped away at my resolve. David remained oblivious, though a certain tension had crept into his interactions with both of us. His glances lingered a little too long, his silences stretched a little too wide. I told myself we could hold on a little longer, that time would bury what we had done under layers of normalcy. But lies, like seeds, tend to grow in darkness. The final fracture came on an unremarkable Thursday evening. David had come home early, a rare event, his mood light. He suggested we all have dinner together, a simple gesture, but one that set me on edge. I moved robotically through preparations, hyper-aware of Liam's presence across the kitchen, his movements too loud, his smiles too sharp. Throughout the meal, Liam kept stealing glances at me, private, aching looks that made my stomach twist. I avoided his gaze, focusing on my plate, nodding at David's stories about work. But when Liam made an offhand comment, a private joke only the two of us would understand, I felt the blood drain from my face. David noticed. His brow furrowed, his smile faltering. His eyes darted between us, sharp and suspicious. I forced a laugh, pushing food around my plate, but the atmosphere had already shifted. After dinner, David excused himself to the study, muttering something about an email he needed to send. Liam lingered, watching me with a reckless intensity. "We can't keep doing this," I hissed, stacking plates with trembling hands. "You're going to ruin everything." "Maybe it deserves to be ruined," he said quietly. Before I could respond, David's voice cut through the hallway, low and commanding.
"Emma."
"Liam, come here." My heart seized. We found him in the study, standing stiffly behind the desk. His face was pale, his hand gripping Liam's phone, my name flashing across an open text thread. The screen glowed like an accusation. For a long, terrible moment, none of us spoke. Finally, David's voice broke the silence, raw and trembling. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." My mouth opened, but no words came out. Liam stepped forward instead. "I love her," he said, defiant and broken at once. David's face crumpled, the betrayal cutting deeper than anger could reach. He turned to me, his eyes hollow. "How could you?" I crumbled under his gaze. Tears spilled down my cheeks, the weight of my sins crashing down at once. "I never meant for this to happen," I whispered. "I was lonely. I was lost." "Save it," David snapped, his voice like a slap. He turned to Liam, his mouth twisting in something that might have been sorrow or disgust. "You're not my son. Not anymore." The words landed like a blow. Liam flinched, but didn't argue. David pointed toward the door, his hand trembling. "Both of you."
"Out."
There was no negotiation, no final plea. Just the cold, brutal severing of a family already frayed beyond repair. I packed a small bag in stunned silence, my hands moving automatically. Liam waited outside, silent and rigid. I didn't know where we would go. I didn't care. All I could feel was the gaping hole where my life had been. Kathy let me crash on her couch for a few nights, but even she couldn't shield me from the consequences of my actions. The whispers started almost immediately, neighbors, mutual friends, even strangers who somehow knew. Shame became my constant companion, a shadow that clung to every step I took. Liam tried to reach out, texts, calls, late-night visits, but I couldn't face him. Whatever spark had once existed between us had been doused by the firestorm we had created. In the end, he drifted away, swallowed by the same loneliness that had drawn us together. Months later, I sat alone in a small, dingy apartment on the other side of town, surrounded by boxes of things that didn't feel like mine anymore. The world outside moved on, indifferent. David had filed for divorce, without another word. Kathy had moved on, her patience finally worn thin. I stared at an old family photo, David, Liam, and me, smiling at a birthday party years ago. A memory of a life that seemed impossibly distant. Some betrayals are written in blood, others in silence. But the worst are the ones we carve into our own hearts, again and again, with no one left to blame.